It was a quiet, cold, windy night in the cornfield I was in with my dog. My father told me to search through the somewhat small yet vast cornfield. My father was always scared of people that weren't us in his field. We both grew up hearing stories of our family members encountering unexplainable shit in forests, old buildings, and that very cornfield my father sent me to search. I remember how my father used to tell me experiences he had in that field. Like seeing the stalks move on their own when the night was still and hearing sounds of animals like coyotes far or even close to him. Yet he's with me sharing the story. I always take my dog with me because he's able to sense something wrong from afar. There were some close calls several times in my life, all could have turned bad but never had thanks to my dog. I quite literally owe my life to him. I then noticed the wind suddenly stopping. It was a still night once again. It was my time to search the field on a still night. I walked onto the dry dirt. My dog silently followed. I walked to the field. Looked so small yet through the stalks so vast. I paused inches before entering the field. My dog too, and he looked up at me wondering why we were still. This gave me reassurance as he did not know what I needed to know. I then entered the field in the near darkness of sunset. As soon as I started roaming around in the field, the sun was gone and moonlight began to shine throughout the place. My flashlight was very dim as it was pretty old. Still my dog walked with me with no issue. I was getting pretty close to the tree line when a memory came up to me. Long ago my mother warned me to not check a certain section of the cornfield. This part of the cornfield was on the far left side. It was a spot that led to the forest that was next to the field. I remember seeing it only once, and that one time was enough for me. There was a clearing with a small yet huge wooden house. It was abandoned for a very long time as my father remembered it always being abandoned. I remember seeing the building's roof through the corn and hearing its many creaking sounds. Something always felt wrong about that house. It just emitted a very bad feeling. Anyways, as I got closer to that side of the field, I noticed my dog looking around more and treading carefully. He does that whenever he knows the presence of small critters like rats who eat the corn. Really nothing to care about. For a moment I felt sorta lost despite me always walking in a straight line when searching through the corn, which is normal considering I've been walking through corn for maybe half an hour already. Then the roof of that house popped out of the corn in the near darkness. That feeling or presence returns. I all of a sudden hear some type of whimpering from some type of animal. It was my dog. I almost forgot that he was here with me after staring at the roof for a second. Just something about that building just takes away my breath and makes me stare at it. Maybe that's my fear of it speaking to me. I take a look at my dog. He's doing nearly the same thing as me, but instead of mindlessly staring at it like how I did, he was staring at it with only one thing in his mind: fear. I immediately knew something was wrong, and that feeling of safety vanished. Before I could think, my dog began moving away from me, slowly getting faster like something was getting close. This was unusual as my dog always stayed by my side. I instantly knew this was my call to follow my dog. As soon as I began to follow him in a sort of speed walk, I heard wind between the corn, shaking the corn in the process. I had a feeling to check if it was really wind, so I put my arm up as high as I could towards the sky and above the corn while on the tips of my toes. The wind wasn't passing through my fingers, as the wind wasn't here today. I was not alone. I began running towards the direction of the end of the field. My dog started running when I wasn't looking, and yet he was too slow to keep up with me. The wind was blowing harder as the corn was shaking, tearing, and falling to the floor. I only imagined it was wind to keep myself calm so I wouldn't panic and ultimately not have enough air in me to keep running. It was blowing harder and harder until my dog wasn't fast enough and got engulfed by the wind. It went straight through him. The wind wasn't interested in him in the slightest, it was blowing towards me. I repeatedly amped my pace to outrun this thing. It did so too, like it knew exactly what move to mimic from me. I started to get tired and started to pant. It did so too with its somewhat deep yet high-pitched, animalistic yet humanoid-ish sounding voice, if I could call it that. I started to see moonlight reflecting off the ground through the corn stalks. I was almost out. I'm almost there. I felt the great feeling of the stalks brushing against me as I exited out of the cornfield. I was not looking at the front of my house anymore. I was looking at nothing but forest. I looked to my left. There was my house from afar. I began running towards it. Almost there. Almost there. As I heard the thing moving in stalks, going towards me, until I heard the sound of my shoes on the porch. I then realized that in my fear I've already reached home. I opened the door, and as I was about to close it, my dog went inside the house as terrified as I was. Once I closed and locked the door, I fell down to the floor out of breath. I looked at my dog. He looked like he was tearing up and shaking violently out of fear. He had scratches on him from the stalks, but too from whatever that thing was in that field. The home was quiet and dark like the field. My parents were asleep since it was late. I stayed next to the door until I could catch my breath. My dog went to his bed, now sound asleep. I got up, and as I was heading back to my room, I felt the need to look at the window. So I did. I pulled the curtains back, put my head as close to the window as I can to see as much out there in the dark as I could, and seen this. I stood there frozen. It stood there frozen as well. We both didn't move for minutes. I noticed that it had its head tilted in what I think was curiosity. As we both looked at each other, I noticed that it had animal-like legs, and yet it still looked humanoid. This was no human nor any animal that I know of. That thing then turned its head facing to the field in an unnatural, robotic, yet animalistic motion, like it had noticed something in said field while tilting its head back to its normal position. It went back into the field unnaturally. I still stood there in complete shock at what I just witnessed. I then put the pieces together with what I encountered. I believe what I encountered that night was a skinwalker. No doubt about it. I never told my family members or anyone about this until now. 7 years have passed since that day. I was 14 when I saw that thing, and it has since been quiet around here. However, I have the feeling like it's been too quiet as of late. A thought that I've been dreading is now lingering in my head. I or someone else might be the unfortunate next one to encounter it. I have a feeling that the next time won't be so pleasant compared to what I experienced. The only thing I can really do at this point is to pray to God that the next time won't be the final time. I can only pray. Skyshale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Does anyone remember this kids show? It was called Candle Cove, and I must have been 6 or 7. I never found reference to it anywhere, so I think it was on a local station around 1971 or 1972. I lived in Ironton at the time. I don't remember which station, but I do remember it was on at a weird time, like 4 p.m. Mike_Painter 65. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show. It seems really familiar to me. I grew up outside of Ashland and was 9 years old in 72. Candle Cove. Was it about pirates? I remember a pirate marionette at the mouth of a cave talking to a little girl. Skyshale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Yes. Okay, I'm not crazy. I remember Pirate Percy. I was always kind of scared of him. He looked like he was built from parts of other dolls, real low budget. His head was an old porcelain baby doll, looked like an antique that didn't belong on the body. I don't remember what station this was. I don't think it was WTSF though. Jaren_2005. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Sorry to resurrect this old thread, but I know exactly what show you mean, Skyshale. I think Candle Cove ran for only a couple months in 71, not 72. I was 12 and I watched it a few times with my brother. It was Channel 58, whatever station that was. My mom would let me switch to it after the news. Let me see what I remember. It took place in Candle Cove, and it was about a little girl who imagined herself to be friends with pirates. The pirate ship was called the Laughingstock, and Pirate Percy wasn't a very good pirate because he got scared too easily. And there was calliope music constantly playing. Don't remember the girl's name. Janice or Jade or something. Think it was Janice. Skyshale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show. Thank you, Jaren. Memories flooded back when you mentioned the Laughingstock and Channel 58. I remember the bow of the ship was a wooden smiling face, with a lower jaw submerged. It looked like it was swallowing the sea, and it had that awful Ed Wynn voice and laugh. I especially remember how jarring it was when they switched from the wooden/plastic model to the foam puppet version of the head that talked. Mike_Painter65. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Ha ha, I remember now too. Winking face, do you remember this part? Sky Shale. You have to go inside. Sky Shale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Ugh, Mike, I got a chill reading that. Yes, I remember. That's what the ship always told Percy when there was a spooky place he had to go in, like a cave or a dark room where the treasure was. And the camera would push in on Laughingstock's face with each pause. You have to go inside. With his two eyes askew and that flopping foam jaw and the fishing line that opened and closed it. It just looked so cheap and awful. You guys remember the villain? He had a face that was just a handlebar mustache above really tall, narrow teeth. Kevin_Hart. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? I honestly thought the villain was Pirate Percy. I was about 5 when this show was on. Nightmare Fuel. Jaren_2005. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? That wasn't the villain, the puppet with the mustache. That was the villain's sidekick, Horace Horrible. He had a monocle too, but it was on top of the mustache. I used to think that meant he had only one eye. But yeah, the villain was another marionette. The Skin Taker. I can't believe what they let us watch back then. Kevin_Hart. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Jesus H. Christ. The Skin Taker. What kind of a kids show were we watching? I seriously could not look at the screen when the Skin Taker showed up. He just descended out of nowhere on his strings. Just a dirty skeleton wearing that brown top hat and cape. And his glass eyes that were too big for his skull. Christ Almighty. Sky Shale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Wasn't his top hat and cloak all sewn up crazily? Was that supposed to be children's skin? Mike_Painter65. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Yeah, I think so. Remember, his mouth didn't open and close. His jaw just slid back and forth. I remember the little girl said, "Why does your mouth move like that?" And the Skin Taker didn't look at the girl but at the camera and said, "T.O. grind your skin." Sky Shale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? I'm so relieved that other people remember this terrible show. I used to have this awful memory, a bad dream I had where the opening jingle ended, the show faded in from black, and all the characters were there, but the camera was just cutting to each of their faces, and they were just screaming, and the puppets and marionettes were flailing spastically, and just all screaming. The girl was just moaning and crying like she had been through hours of this. I woke up many times from that nightmare. I used to wet the bed when I had it. Kevin_Hart. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? I don't think that was a dream. I remember that. I remember that was an episode. Sky Shale 033. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? No, not possible. There was no plot or anything. I mean, literally just standing in place crying and screaming for the whole show. Kevin_Hart. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Maybe I'm manufacturing the memory because you said that, but I swear to God I remember seeing what you described. They just screamed. Jaren_2005. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? Oh God. Yes. The little girl, Janice, I remember seeing her shake. And the Skin Taker screaming through his gnashing teeth. His jaw careening so wildly I thought it would come off its wire hinges. I turned it off and it was the last time I watched. I ran to tell my brother and we didn't have the courage to turn it back on. Mike_Painter65. Subject: Candle Cove Local Kids Show? I visited my mom today at the nursing home. I asked her about when I was little in the early 70s, when I was 8 or 9, and if she remembered a kid's show, Candle Cove. She said she was surprised I could remember that, and I asked why. And she said, because I used to think it was so strange that you said, "I'm gonna go watch Candle Cove now, Mom," and then you would tune the TV to static and just watch dead air for 30 minutes. You had a big imagination with your little pirate show.